So I think that in South Africa at the moment we're operating what I would regard as a two-speed economy. I think the very top end of the market is under no pressure at all. I'd say very little pressure, whilst the bottom end of the market is under significant pressure. Why do I say this? I often like to go to grassroots level and not rely too heavily on national statistics, but look at what the retailers are reporting. And ultimately, if you look at a business like Woolworths, specifically with their food business, they're sustaining 13% odd turnover growth in those stores. Whilst if you go one level down, and that's obviously the very top end of the market, if you go one level down to Pick n Pay, for example, their recent results indicated about 7.5% turnover growth. They're obviously LSM 6 and above. But clearly not as affluent a customer base as Woolworths, so the growth there a bit slower. And then we know from the recent ShopRite numbers, or certainly the ones to the junior end, that their ShopRite stores in particular in South Africa are under quite a lot of pressure. Checkers seems to be still gaining a lot of market share. But from the numbers they've disclosed, we're looking at about roughly 5% odd turnover growth in the second half from a ShopRite store perspective. So you can quite clearly see a picture emerging of the wealthy in this country are not under significant pressure, whilst the very poor are under very, very high levels of pressure. And I think what it boils down to ultimately is at the very top end of the market, you've got customers who probably haven't changed their house in a number of years. So they've been deleveraging for a while. Their debt levels are probably static, if not a bit lower than they've been. And we've seen that in a stagnant housing market, and the kind of bond extension numbers that we see out of the banks haven't been very good. But essentially, these guys have got lower interest rates and lower repayments than they've ever had. And they've probably kept their jobs and are doing fine. Whilst at the bottom end of the market, I think that customer base has had a lot of unsecured credit pushed into them, and the job losses are starting to be quite acutely felt. And we can see that in the year-to-date numbers. Adcorp releases their employment index, and they talk of about 260,000 odd jobs that have been lost in South Africa in the year-to-date, much of that concentrated in mining and manufacturing, which is obviously a much lower LSM customer base.